Hello, welcome to Edupedia World Video. In this video, we will talk about ancient Greek civilization. In order to more easily track the timeline of history, standard periodization of ancient Greek history, offered by modern historians, consists of four main periods: prehistoric ages, the so-called Dark Ages, Archaic Age, Classical Age, and Hellenistic Age. The prehistoric ages refer to the founding and earliest history of Greek civilization. They came to Greece around 2000 BC from the eastern areas and their original homeland, Mesopotamia. However, according to ancient Greek historians themselves, Greeks were not the first to settle in Greece. Before they came, there were already other civilizations emerging, like the Minoan civilization on Crete and the so-called Pelasgian civilization. We have already talked about Minoan civilization, but what about this Pelasgian? Who were the Pelasgians? Neither the ancient historians were, nor modern historians are certain about the identity of Pelasgians. Greek historian Herodotus, known as the father of history, wrote that Pelasgians came to Greece before Greeks, that they were the autochthon nation of Greeks, which was not ethnically related to them. They considered Pelasgians to be barbarians, as they said. The term barbarian literally means people whose language we do not understand, or simply foreigner. Herodotus described the lifestyle and most ancient history of Pelasgians. On the other hand, Greek historian Strabo, as well as other historians, wrote about ancient Egyptians, doing everything that Herodotus ascribed to Pelasgians, although Strabo wrote about Pelasgians too, as a separate nation from Egyptians, but in a bit different manner. Whenever Herodotus mentioned Pelasgians having done something, Strabo instead wrote Egyptians had done that. This could mean that ancient Pelasgians were related to Egyptians, causing the confusion among Greek historians, who could have interchangeably used the term Egyptians for both of them. Modern historians came to a conclusion that Pelasgians were an ancient Canaanite nation, originally called Pelasgians or Philistines. Beside the name similarity, Philistines were indeed related to ancient Egyptians, as both descended from the same ancestors. Moreover, another people akin to Philistines and Egyptians could have been the founders of the already mentioned Minoan civilization on Crete. As far as Greeks are concerned, coming to Balkan after these nations' arrival, they eventually destroyed or assimilated both Pelasgian and Minoan civilizations, afterwards forming their own Greek civilization. These Greeks are sometimes denominated as Achaeans, Danans, or Mycenaeans, named after the ancient city Mycenae in Greece by modern historians. However, these names were probably not Greek, and originally did not refer to Greeks at all, because these names have no meaning in Greek. Besides, there were many descendants of Pelasgians, Minoans, and other non-Greek nations who still lived in all Greek lands, most notably Semitic tribes who arrived from Phoenicia, that is, Canaan. One of the proofs for this claim is that numerous names of cities, rivers, mountains, and regions in Greece, as well as many figures from Greek mythology, originate from Semitic languages, not the Greek language. Modern historians often refer to these people as pre-Indo-European tribes. The same applies to standard classification of ancient Greek tribes, who were called Achaeans, Ionians, Aeolians, and Dorians. With the exception of Ionian and Aeolian name, the other two also originally referred to non-Greek tribes. The true original name of all Greeks was Ionians, which is a corrupted version of the older form, Iovanians. They were named so after their ancestor and founder of Greek nation, Javan, who lived in very distant past. The confusion among modern historians regarding the names of ancient Greek tribes and their most remote past, as well as periodization of their history, mainly is the result of historical sources deficiency, that is, the lack of reliable and understandable written historical sources. Likewise, many existing historical sources about that period of Greek's history are not interpreted well, due to certain biased views on the origins of Greek and other ancient civilizations. Even more, the historic period following the Greek prehistoric age, from 12th to 8th century BC, is usually called Dark Ages, because of the total lack of historical sources. Anyway, we will continue our story about the ancient history of Greeks and their arrival to Greece. After their arrival and conquest of Pelasgian and Minoan civilization, ancient Greeks founded many large, magnificent cities, which became city-states, similar to those in their homeland, Mesopotamia. Ancient Greek city-states were called poleis. During the period between 8th and 6th century BC, Greeks began colonizing all Mediterranean lands. They founded their colonies in Asia Minor, North Africa, Italy, and even Spain, almost the same way ancient Phoenicians did. It is why that period of their history is sometimes called Greek colonization period. Many Greek poleis sent their colonies to different parts of the Mediterranean world. Some of the most famous Greek poleis were Sparta, Athens, Corinth, Argos, Megara, and others. The Greek city-state of Sparta, located in the south of Greece, is remembered for its special kind of military education system they practiced. Spartans were quite a warlike tribe that was constantly preparing for wars against neighboring tribes. They belonged to the so-called Dorian tribe and considered themselves to be the descendants of the legendary Greek hero Hercules. However, if we analyze the myths about their origin, we will see the original Spartans were related to ancient Macedonians and certain Semitic tribes that came to Gaul. The Greek city-state Athens, the modern capital of Greece, was said to have been founded again not by Greeks, but by Egyptians, and that the first few Athenian kings were Egyptians. All ancient Greek historians wrote about it, although those did not have to be Egyptians proper, but some other people that were related to them or only came from Egypt and adjacent lands, such as in the case of the mentioned Pelasgians, that is, Philistines. Athens is primarily remembered as the cradle of democracy, though it somewhat differed from modern-day democratic systems. In ancient Greece, they voted by yelling at the agora, a sort of ancient parliament. The loudest group of people's proposal would be accepted. However, the negative side of the democratic system, both ancient and modern, is that only proposals of people who were in majority would be accepted. And statistics tell us that the most of the time majority will not make the right decision. One man's good proposal could always be outvoted by votes of majority of people with wrong way of thinking or intentions. Though different in form, there was still not too much difference between it and other ancient non-democratic ruling systems. They both have certain negative and positive sides. Before founding democratic system, Athenians had other forms of government, the same ones as other ancient Greek and non-Greek city-states. We will now mention a few prominent Athenian legislators and leaders. The first known legislator of Athens was Draco, who lived at the end of the 7th century BC. He wrote down the Greek laws that had been orally transmitted until his time. Not much is known about them though, except that they were known for their harshness. That is why the expression draconian laws refers to very severe laws and punishments. Another equally famous Athenian lawgiver from 6th century BC was Solon. He established many new laws, and abolished slavery in Athens, though there is little reliable evidence about his time and laws, which are considered to have been the foundation of future democracy. At the same time, after Solon, a man called Pisistratus seized the throne of Athens and established tyranny, although tyranny did not have the same meaning as today. Actually, Pisistratus was very popular and loved ruler, but his successors were not, because of their immorality, so that eventually tyranny became a synonym for cruel rulership of one man. During the reign of Pisistratus, the first tyrant, the famous Greek epics Iliad and Odyssey were written down, as they were only orally transmitted until his time. We will say something about them at the final part of this lecture. And finally, one of the most famous Athenian leaders, who ruled in much later period, was Pericles. He is thought to have established Athenian democracy in its full form. The period of his reign was considered to be the golden age of Athens. Pericles was helping the poor, supplied Athens with everything they needed, and formed an alliance that was dominating over many other Greek city-states. Pericles ruled Athens after the so-called Greco-Persian Wars. During the 6th century BC, Persians conquered a great part of the Old World and formed a vast Persian empire. After conquering all Asia and Egypt, they headed towards Europe. Since many Greek cities existed in Asia Minor as well, which was under the Persian rule, those cities asked for help from Greek cities in mainland Greece, and then started a rebellion against Persians. This event is known as the Ionian Revolt, and it occurred in 499 BC. Persians defeated them in 494 BC, and then headed towards mainland Greek cities, which had tried to help the revolted Greek cities in Asia Minor. The leader of the Persians was King Darius. He sent his armies directly to Greece across the sea, but was defeated by Greek forces, mainly Athenians, in the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. Then, 10 years later, next Persian king, Xerxes, launched another invasion with even larger army, attacking from the north. Many Greeks decided not to oppose Persians in the open field and to wait for them in the narrow Thermopylae Pass. Actually, only a few thousand Greeks, including the famous 300 Spartans led by King Leonidas, stayed to fight against Persians. And after 3 days of battle, Persians were victorious. They succeeded in conquering almost all of Greece and southeast Balkan area, including the city of Athens, but except for Peloponnesus, which was still under the Greek rule. However, in the next 3 battles, Persians were defeated by Greeks. In the naval battle of Salamis in 480 BC, led by Themistocles, and finally in 479 BC in the battle of Plataea and Mycale. After these battles, Persians retreated from the lands of Greeks, who even liberated all Greek cities in Asia Minor. The war ended in 449 BC. It was a decisive Greek victory. Though victorious over the Persians, Greek city-states very soon started a new war between each other. It was a war between Athens and their allies on one side, and Sparta and their allies on the other side. It was the so-called Peloponnesian War, which lasted from 430 to 404 BC. The first period of this war is usually called Archidemian War, named after Spartan king Archidem. Spartans were victorious at the beginning of the war and had a much stronger army. On the other hand, Athenians had a strong fleet with many ships, which was a grave trouble for Spartans. Athenian ruler Pericles died during this war because of the plague that appeared in Athens. One of the most significant battles during that war was the Battle of Amphipolis in 422 BC. Athenians, led by Thucydides, were defeated by Spartans, led by Brasidas, who died in this battle. After that, Athens and Sparta agreed to terminate their hostilities. However, already in 418 BC, Athenian allies attacked Spartan allies, and the biggest battle of Peloponnesian War ensued. Spartans were victorious again in the Battle of Mantinea, while the Athenian alliance fell apart. In 415 BC, Athenians decided to send a great army of ships led by Alcibiades to help their allies in the west and conquer the Sicilian island. Unfortunately for them, Sicilian expedition was a complete disaster, and Spartans with their allies completely destroyed the Athenian army, while Alcibiades turned sides and went to Sparta. The last and decisive battle of the Peloponnesian War was the Battle of Aegospotami, which was fought in 405 BC. Spartans, led by their admiral Lysander, defeated Athenians and were the final victors of that war. After the Peloponnesian War, Greek city-states, such as Sparta, Athens and Thebes, waged many other minor wars between each other. And while they were fighting, another foreign nation appeared in the north and soon afterwards conquered all of them, the whole Greece. It was the Macedonian king Philip II and his son Alexander III. So while Greeks were united, the great and powerful Persians, who conquered all of Asia, could not defeat them. And when Greeks were not united and fought between each other, even minor and barely known nations could defeat them, such as ancient Macedonians. After conquering the northern Balkan tribes, the Macedonian king Philip II headed towards Greece and defeated the allied Greek forces in the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC. Ancient Macedonians and Greeks made a union and decided to declare a war against Persia, which was to be led by King Philip himself. However, since Philip was assassinated before the war, the throne and the war leadership of Greco-Macedonian forces were transferred to his son, Alexander III, known as Alexander the Great. The first battle during the conquest of Persian Empire was the Battle of Granicus in Asia Minor in 334 BC, in which King Alexander defeated Persian forces of King Darius III, with his special kind of military forces with long spears, called phalanx. Then, getting closer and closer to the center of Persian Empire, Alexander defeated Persians and their allies in two more major battles: the Battle of Issus in 333 BC and the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC, when the whole Persian Empire was finally conquered. Before accomplishing that task, Alexander first conquered Phoenician cities and Egypt. The greatest resistance was offered by the Phoenician city Tyre, which was later utterly destroyed. King Alexander was not satisfied with conquering only Persia, that is, almost the whole of Asia, but went even further and tried to conquer India and all the lands he could find and reach. He was yet another world conqueror. In 327 BC, he defeated Indian king Porus in the Battle of Hydaspes River, although India itself was never conquered, and Alexander's army did not want to follow him anymore because of the exhaustion from the war and many difficulties they had to endure during this conquest. Suddenly, in 323 BC, Alexander died from unknown causes. Some say he was poisoned, the others that he died of some disease. After his death, the Greek Macedonian Empire was divided among his successors, known as Diadochi. Greece and Macedonia was ruled by Alexander's general Antigonus, that is, by the so-called Antigonid dynasty. Egypt was ruled by Ptolemy and his Ptolemaic dynasty, and Persia and adjacent lands belonged to Alexander's general Seleucus, that is, the Seleucid dynasty. The age of Alexander the Great and his successors is usually called the Hellenistic Age, after the name of the Greeks, which was Hellenes. For the end, let's say a few words about culture, religion, and mythology of ancient Greeks. Greeks were famous for their philosophers, scientists, and artists. The most known among philosophers were Pythagoras, Thales, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who was the teacher of Alexander the Macedonian. Considering scientists, we could mention the Greek mathematician Euclides, the astronomer Aristarchus, and Archimedes. Among ancient Greek historians, the most famous were Herodotus, Thucydides, Diodorus Siculus, Strabo, and others. Greek physician Hippocrates is considered to be the founder of modern medicine. And some of the most famous Greek poets were Hesiod, Pindar, Euripides, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Aristophanes, and of course Homer, the author of world popular epics Iliad and Odyssey. Both of these epics tell a story about the time of the so-called Trojan War, about the Greek conquest of Troy, a city in Asia Minor, which occurred in so remote past that ancient Greeks themselves were not certain when it had occurred, though most of them thought it was in the 12th century BC. However, these Homeric poetic legends do not differ only to that war between Greeks and Trojans, barely known to history, but they represent a collection of mixed vague memories about various historical events which occurred during the period of several centuries, from 19th century all the way up to 8th century BC, when Homer was supposed to have lived. In addition, most of those events do not refer to Greek history, but to history of ancient people from Near East, mostly Semitic tribes that came to Greece in 8th century and transmitted the stories from their own past to Greeks. Greeks remembered all those stories through Iliad, Odyssey, and all the other myths and legends of theirs. These Semitic tribes, such as Phoenicians, brought the alphabet together with those stories, from which the Greek alphabet emerged. You can try yourself to find the similarities between these Greek epics and Near Eastern ancient historical documents. Concerning their religion and mythology, they practiced a polytheistic religion system, as every other ancient people did, worshipping many gods and heroes. Actually, Greek mythology is perhaps the richest mythology in the whole ancient world. Some of their deities' names are listed here. In our next lecture, we will talk about ancient Roman Empire. Thank you for watching Edupedia World Video.